What's up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. It is time for a review of the new Annihilator record, Ballistic, Sadistic, out this past Friday, January 24th. It's been a while since I checked in with Jeff Waters and the Annihilator crew. You know, years ago at this point on this channel, I did a video about Alice in Hell, their debut, and how it's one of the unsung gems of late 80s thrash metal. Still feel that way. It's one of my favorites in the genre's history. I also think there's actually some worthwhile material in the 90s Annihilator catalog too, but no one else thought so because guess what? It was the 90s. What are you gonna do? But a couple of those albums are worth checking out. All that being said, I'll admit that I actually haven't been following this slew of new releases from them in the 21st century all that close. The band's 2005 album, Schizo Deluxe, I was kind of randomly into as a teenager who had just discovered the band's classic material. There was an album a few years ago called Suicide Society that I remember liking a bunch of songs on. And then, of course, there was that album with all the guests on it. I think it came out in like 2007. It was called Metal, which is the fucking stupidest name for a metal album ever, but at the time, anything that had Alexi Laiho even peripherally involved, I was all in on, so I remember checking that one out too. But this brand spanking new one, Ballistic, Sadistic, which is another brilliant moment of inspiration from the titling department. This is the first Annihilator record that I'm really sitting down with and taking in as a whole in quite some time, so this is exciting for me. Honestly, my faith in the ability of the old school thrash bands to keep things interesting on new records has been kind of waning in recent years. Like when Overkill or Sodom or God forbid Metallica puts out a new record, I am always finding myself kind of indifferent. Don't get me wrong, there's still been a handful of good and even great albums from classic thrash bands, Creator a few years ago, last year Death Angel, but my interest in Annihilator music, new Annihilator music in 2020, it definitely comes from a particular void that I'm trying to fill. Because look, let's face it, and I'm sorry to all the hipster pitchfork writers who pretend to follow metal, but Power Trip, they're not that different or exciting. It's just that you guys haven't cultivated an actual thrash metal palette, so you think they're fucking revolutionary, but trust me, they're not, and their music is not enough to carry this movement forward. Anyway, I digress. Ballistic Sadistic is the type of record that's made for 50-year-olds who wear denim jackets with Slayer and Nuclear Assault patches on them. That is the target demo here, the former That Metal Show crowd. But unlike a lot of new records that cater to that crowd, that end up sounding kind of tired and dated, Annihilator are firing on all cylinders here. I am very impressed. The way these songs are written, they're wonderfully nostalgic in the sense that they suck you into the heyday of thrash metal and of heavy metal in general, actually, but you still feel like you're in 2020. This is music for now. Case in point, the fucking balls to the wall ferocity of a track like Out With the Garbage, which is one of my favorites on here. That pre-chorus section with the synced up double kick drum and how it kind of lands on that slightly dissonant note before segueing into this light speed chorus that's somehow super technical and catchy at the same time, which is very hard to do. And then we get a satisfying mid-tempo bridge section as sort of a reprieve from that, and we get some great solos, which showcase some bass playing as well. This would have been a classic song in 1988, but it sounds great now. The production hits hard, the song rockets from memorable part to memorable part. It is fantastic. The closer on here, the end of the lie, that's another blistering track, and it's actually kind of an album outlier here in the sense that this song is pedaled to the metal the entire way through, where the majority of this album, the band are notably conscious about switching things up in terms of feel, tempo, mood, just keeping things dynamic. This is kind of the one exception where they just go for the throat to kind of send the album off with a bang. And the song The Attitude as well, after that menacing entrance at least, is another relentless thrasher. It's also a gentle reminder, or maybe not so gentle reminder, of how harmonious that marriage between hardcore punk and thrash metal was and is. I was just listening to that DRI album Crossover the other day and it just made me think of that. But as I just alluded to a minute ago, there is a great balance of tracks on here. There are, of course, the vintage thrash rippers, which I just went through, and I Am Warfare also belongs on that list. There's a killer breakdown in that song. But then there are also songs like the mid-tempo thrash number, Lip Service. That's one of my favorite songs on here. Or Psycho Ward, which is a song that's peppered with these shamelessly delicious 80s glam metal influences. It's also a song that illustrates something else important about this record, that Annihilator aren't afraid to have fun on this record. Sure, this is an angry and aggressive recording, but it's also a fun one. The vocals always have this tongue-in-cheek snarl to them. The less blistering riffs sort of have this loose exuberance that radiates off of them. It's just a fun record. You just never get the sense here that Annihilator are taking themselves too seriously. You get the sense instead they're just having a really good time, and as a listener, it's very easy to join them. And speaking of Psycho Ward and Lip Service, one thing those two songs have in common is the seamless incorporation of clean guitars for dynamic effect, which of course is something that Annihilator have been doing since the Alice in Hell title track. But Psycho Ward especially has this wonderful bridge between the two guitar solos where these clean guitars come in and they're kind of just floating over this bed of distorted guitar, and the part is so good and so emotionally satisfying that it makes a song for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't care that much about Psycho Ward. It's kind of cheesy lyrically, which we'll get to in a second, but that part just makes a song. And Lip Service has a similarly composed clean guitar section in the middle that eventually gives way to just this epic fucking harmonized guitar solo. Oh my god, the best moment on the LP, hands down. Also the track One Wrong Move, that's another one that incorporates clean guitar very smoothly. Halfway through that song, there's this ballad-like slowdown that's propped up by these studio-generated strings in the background. It's a notable third dimension for an otherwise forgettable song. And that's the thing, obviously Annihilator fans already know this, but the band really know how to add depth to thrash metal without actually compromising the genre at all. Like you could say that Metallica added depth to thrash metal on the Black Album, but they completely compromised the genre and arguably weren't even playing it anymore. Annihilator, on the other hand, are able to add layers and layers and layers, but it's just an instantly recognizable iteration of thrash metal. I made this argument when I talked about Alice in Hell. Also, to be fair, one thing that doesn't exactly hurt this album is Jeff Waters' guitar playing, which, look, the riff writing is sharp, but the solos in particular are phenomenal. Fun fact about that, actually. Esteemed author Joel McIver, in his magnum opus, The 100 Greatest Metal Guitarists, gave Jeff Waters the #3 spot of all time. Granted, Mr. McIver has some remarkably poorly formed opinions in that book that, pun intended, annihilate his credibility, namely that one of the best Zakk Wylde solos is in the Ozzy Osbourne song Dreamer, or that Matt Heafy from Trivium's sweep picking on the Crusade is hard to play. But it's still awesome that someone recognized this man's talent because he is an amazing player. Quite impressed by the Psycho Ward solos. I'm impressed by I Am Warfare. Very creative licks in both of those. And anyone who's watched this channel before knows that the sloppily performed, poorly written, screeching solos that appear often in thrash metal and death metal are a big pet peeve for me and really do affect my listening experience. So there are no such issues on this album, I'm happy to report. Really, the only recurring weak point of Ballistic Sadistic is the cartoonish, immature, and kind of cringy lyrics, which I don't even need to name specific instances because it's basically every song, but The Attitude, Riot, I Am Warfare, you can start there for references. But in thrash metal, we are forced to ask the question, how much do lyrics actually matter? If at all. To me, they probably matter more than the average fan just from spending so much time with 90s hip hop and prog metal as well, which are genres that are just have so much more emphasis on lyrical content. But do the lyrics on this album objectively matter less than the skill of the musicians, than the ferocious rhythm section, than the guitar riffs? Yeah. It's no different than like on the hip hop side of things, the way I can listen to a Cannabis album and enjoy it, despite the beats being absolute trash sometimes, just because I put so much more emphasis on the rhyming. Slaughterhouse too. But yeah, the lyrics, they're not great. They're just not. And the reality of this record as a whole is, as much as I enjoy it, that not every track here is essential. One Wrong Move, filler, Riot, pretty plain. Psycho Ward, I've already kind of talked about how if it weren't for that part in the middle, it wouldn't be of much interest to me. Also, I Am Warfare has the worst chorus on the LP. So this is not by any means a murderer's row of perfect tracks. But like I said, this record is fun. I don't know yet if it'll be the best thrash metal record I hear all year, but it'll definitely be one of the most fun. And certainly one of the best in terms of musicianship. This is probably my favorite old school thrash metal record since Death Angel Humanicide last May. And again, the way the songs are written, they invoke everything great about the thrash metal movement, but they don't feel dated. They feel current, they feel relevant, they feel powerful. So definitely give this a listen if you are at all on the hunt for what I just described. You will not be disappointed. Ballistic Sadistic gets a 7 out of 10 from me. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any other rock or metal related content that I publish here on a weekly basis. I really appreciate you watching, liking, disliking, just engaging in any fashion. Twitter, Instagram handle @RyanPannyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.